We are back at Heathrow. However, as usual, we're not here to talk about planes. Although I gotta say, that's pretty cool. Heathrow is an airport that's important for the entire UK, but getting here from the southwest isn't super easy. But how can 8 miles of track fix this problem, free up space at Waterloo, compete with KLM, and someone's gonna build it for us? Heathrow Airport, as we all know, is a very important transportation hub for not only the region, but for all of Britain. It's the busiest airport in Europe by passenger numbers, with flights to over 200 destinations. And it also employs a lot of workers directly and indirectly. With around 90,000 workers, it's one of the biggest single-site employers in the country. Shut up. No one cares about your car. It's one of the biggest single-site employers in the country. Being such a significant airport, it sees many different types of trips and passengers coming from many different places, not just London. Now, Heathrow is very well connected with Central and East London with its 3 different rail services, but as you might remember from the last few videos I made about Heathrow, its links towards the west and south and the rest of the country in general aren't so great. This is why so many short connecting flights use Heathrow, despite landing slots being very difficult for airlines to get their hands on, as the airport is so congested. Getting to other cities by train requires first travelling into London and changing trains a few times, which isn't super fun if you've just gotten off a long flight, have heavy bags, or aren't familiar with the trains. A taxi will force you to sell at least 3 kidneys, and rental cars aren't much cheaper. Additionally, travel to the areas surrounding the airport requires slow and unreliable buses like that one, which use several different ticketing systems and are quite confusing to use. And anyway, the only way for buses to get to Terminals 2 and 3 is via the Northern Access Tunnel, which, as you can guess, enters the airport from the north, so not exactly easy if you're coming from the south or west. So getting to other cities isn't very easy. It's no wonder so many people choose short connecting flights, or don't even fly through Heathrow. This lack of direct onward connections to other cities in Britain makes flying through Heathrow less competitive, especially when KLM provides frequent flights from small UK cities into Amsterdam Schiphol, a competing hub airport. It's clear that we need better rail service from Heathrow to places that aren't London. A few months ago, I made a video about the proposed Western Link, which would run from Terminal 5 to the Great Western Main Line and provide service to cities out west, or at the very least, Reading. But today we're talking about a different plan to use these extra platforms under Terminal 5. This is the Heathrow Southern Access. The idea is simple, and kind of given away by the name, to build a rail link out of Heathrow toward the south. The idea of connecting Heathrow to the rail network from the south is far from new, however. Since the 1960s, there's been at least 10 proposals to build something like this. The first was in 1967 and involved a line from Terminals 1 and 2 to Feltham, and trains would run from there to Waterloo or Victoria. However, even in the 60s, the approaches to these were really congested, so the Piccadilly line got built instead, built to Heathrow. Now, we don't have time to go through every other proposal, otherwise we'd be here all day. Most of them were sort of the same thing, a bit irrelevant or straight up crazy, or some mix of those 3 things. But a lack of funding, other airport priorities, building other links to the airport, and lots of other slightly uninteresting reasons meant that this line never got built, otherwise you wouldn't be watching this video right now. But you are watching it, so why not subscribe? That way you won't miss out on any new videos and you can help support the channel. And if you really want to help support the channel, you can become a channel member and get your name on screen right here. Anyway, back to the video. But it wasn't until somewhat recently that we got a proposal focusing on trains from Heathrow to the south and west. So what's proposed today? The main proposal is by Heathrow Southern Railway. Although Hounslow has their own version of this, we'll get to that in a minute. Heathrow Southern Railway wants to build a privately funded line that runs for 8 miles, coming out of Terminal 5, south along the M25, and then joining onto the Reading line just before Virginia Water. It also has a connection to Staines. This is probably the best version of the Heathrow Southern Access because it allows direct service to a huge variety of destinations. Big plane. That today are poorly served by the airport. So what would service on this line look like? The most realistic situation is probably a service running from Terminal 5 down the link and joining onto the slow lines on the southwestern main line at Byfleet and running to Woking and maybe Guildford. And with a connection to the existing platforms at Terminal 5, Elizabeth Line trains could be extended to Staines, although this would additionally require an expensive rebuild of the station at Staines. Staines is intent on getting service to Heathrow, so I'm sure they can figure that out. But these services would make getting to the airport so much easier, as with a change at Woking, you can get to almost the entire southwest, and Staines would also get a nice Elizabeth Line connection too. But I think that there's a better way to utilize this link and better connect Heathrow to the southwest. Love those engines. I'd say that it would be worth taking some of the Waterloo to Portsmouth or Waterloo to Weymouth trains and running them into Paddington instead of Waterloo. So how's that gonna happen? We could take these trains off of the main line at Byfleet, run them up the southern access into Heathrow, stopping at Terminal 5, Terminals 2 and 3, and then up the existing link onto the Great Western Main Line, stopping at Old Oak Common when that gets built, and finally into Paddington. This service could take over a couple paths from the Heathrow Express because between Heathrow and Paddington it would do the same thing as the Heathrow Express. And this would free up more paths into the very congested Waterloo to run more suburban trains. This seems like the ideal outcome for the southern access. Direct trains from Bournemouth, Southampton and Portsmouth into the Heathrow terminals and to High Speed 2 at Old Oak Common, all while freeing up paths on the very busy approach into Waterloo and bringing Elizabeth Line trains to Staines, of course. Now, before someone writes an angry comment complaining that service from these cities into London would be a couple minutes longer, we don't need to divert every train into Paddington. Currently, a train departs Waterloo for Portsmouth at least every 30 minutes, and every 30 a train departs for Weybridge via Southampton, although every other train splits at Southampton. We could run something like every other Portsmouth train to Heathrow every hour, and maybe a few Weybridge trains at peak times, or a few more if demand is good. This would still leave most trains running into Waterloo, but still provide a more than sufficient service from these cities in the southwest to Heathrow Airport. However, as I said earlier, this isn't the only proposal. Hounslow has something else in mind. Their idea is to have the line come out of Terminal 5 and immediately make a U-turn back towards Hounslow, joining the line near Feltham, much like the original proposal for a southern link from Heathrow. This is actually a decent idea if we want to run some Waterloo to Heathrow services. However, as you can guess, this doesn't allow anywhere near the connections you'd get to cities in the southwest. The many level crossings around Virginia Water would make it difficult to run more trains on that line, meaning you could only really run more trains to Windsor, which isn't exactly the entire southwest. Facing west, things look a little better though. Currently, getting to Heathrow from Clapham, Putney, Richmond and Twickenham isn't especially easy either. Your options are slow buses, but at least they're red this time, or as always, going into central London and changing trains. With the connection at Feltham, we could run some of the Weybridge or Windsor services into Heathrow, making access to the airport from these parts of London so much easier. Well, at the cost of a couple services to Windsor and Weybridge. However, building the line just to Feltham would only really improve airport access for these parts of London, a lot of Hounslow, and you miss the opportunity to directly connect Heathrow to other cities in the southwest. So, sorry Hounslow, but I really don't think that this is the best idea. The thing is, with the main proposal for the southern access, it's still possible to run trains through southwest London and into Heathrow. They would just leave the Reading line at Staines rather than Feltham, which, yes, is a couple minutes longer, but I'd say that that's a sacrifice worth making to connect, like, all of the cities in the southwest to Heathrow Airport. It's clear that creating a rail link from Terminal 5 to the southwestern main line has huge benefits for airport passengers, the airlines, Heathrow Airport, the cities in the southwest and the broader economy. And all of this only requires 8 miles of track and a short tunnel. So why are we not building this thing already? Well, it's got some momentum at least. Currently the line is still in the planning phase and still needs approval to be built. Despite the line being a private project, they still need to prove that they won't damage the environment too much, and the government needs to hand them the big piece of paper that says, yeah, you can build that, but getting all the boroughs to agree is a little difficult. Spelthorne needs trains to go to Staines, and is also very fussy about not touching Staines Moor, which apparently has some nice looking plans. Hounslow is still intent on that weird U-turn thing that we talked about earlier, and Hillingdon is terrified of the idea of a third runway, and is therefore scared of anything with the word Heathrow in it. Runnymede still hasn't figured out how this will help them, even though they're not even building it. And for some reason, Windsor's getting involved, so yeah, it's a bit of a mess. But hopefully this thing gets built soon, and hopefully we actually get long-distance trains serving the Heathrow stations. I've now run out of things to say, and I'm gonna go watch planes now, so see us next time. Bye. I should probably not forget the camera.